You and your spouse both get up every morning. You both drive to work. You both put in 8, 9, sometimes 10 hours. And at the end of the month, after the mortgage, the groceries, the car payments, the insurance, the utilities, the kids, you look at your bank account and think, where did it go? Combined, your household might be pulling in $90,000, $100,000, maybe more, and you still feel like you're one bad month away from a problem. You're not bad with money, you're not lazy, you're not doing something obviously wrong. So what's actually happening? That's what we're going to talk about today. Because this feeling, this specific exhaustion of working hard and still feeling financially stuck, it has a real explanation. And once you understand it, you stop blaming yourself. Back in the 1970s, most middle-class households ran on one income. Dad worked, mom stayed home, or vice versa. And somehow, they bought a house, raised kids, and retired with a pension. That sounds like a fairy tale now. But here's what actually changed. When women entered the workforce in large numbers, which was genuinely good for society, something else happened that nobody talks about enough. Housing prices adjusted to reflect two incomes. When lenders and sellers realized that most households now had two paychecks, the price of everything that requires a loan stretched to absorb that second income. The market didn't say, great, now families have more breathing room. It said, great, now families can afford more debt. So that second income didn't double your quality of life. It got priced in. And now, in most cities, you need two incomes just to afford what one income bought 2 generations ago. You didn't get richer. The baseline got more expensive. Now here's where it gets heavier. Because a second income doesn't arrive clean. It arrives with a bill attached. Childcare alone can run $25,000 to $35,000 a year for 2 kids. That's after-tax money. You might need to earn $40,000 just to net that. Then there's the second car, the extra insurance, the gas, the $14 lunch you grab because there was no time to pack one. None of that is wasteful. All of it is just the reality of 2 people maintaining 2 careers while running a household. Some economists have looked at this closely and found that for certain middle-income families, the actual financial gain from a second income, after all those costs are stripped away, can be surprisingly thin. Sometimes a few $100s a month, sometimes less. You're both exhausted, and the margin is that narrow. That's not a personal failure. That's the math. Now let's talk about inflation, not as a percentage on the news, but the way it actually feels on a Tuesday at the grocery store. Inflation doesn't land on everyone the same way. If you have significant assets, real estate, a stock portfolio, inflation often works in your favor. The value of what you own tends to rise. You're hedged. But if you're in the middle, modest home, a 401k you're slowly building, a salary that someone else decides whether to adjust, inflation is a quiet, steady drain that nobody officially announces. Your grocery bill went up, your car insurance went up, your utilities went up, and your employer gave you a 3% raise in a year when real inflation on the things you actually buy was running closer to 7 or 8%. In real terms, you took a pay cut, but nobody used those words. Your paycheck number went up slightly, so it feels like progress. But what that number buys went down. That gap between the figure on your stub and what it actually covers, that's where the squeeze lives. That's why the math that should work doesn't quite work. And then there's the part that keeps people up at night, not the present, the future. Your parents' generation, if they held a steady job long enough, often had a pension, a guaranteed monthly payment in retirement, for life, regardless of what the market did. The risk sat with the employer. That's largely gone. What replaced it is the 401k, a useful tool, but the entire burden of your retirement now sits on your decisions. Your contribution rate, your fund picks, your discipline in a month when the car breaks down and you're deciding what to skip. And most middle-class people start seriously contributing in their late 30s or 40s, because their 30s were consumed by down payments and diapers, and just keeping the household running. By the time there's a little breathing room, the clock on compound growth has already been ticking for 20 years without you. So you're not just squeezed today. You're carrying quiet anxiety about whether the future actually works out. That's not irrational. That's a reasonable response to a system that moved the risk onto you without ever asking if you were ready. So here's where I'll leave you. If you and your partner are both working, both contributing, both doing what you were told you were supposed to do, and it still feels tight, you are not the problem. You're living inside a set of structures that were quietly reshaped over decades. Housing that priced in your second income before you ever spent it. Retirement risk transferred onto your shoulders without much fanfare. Inflation that erodes the middle specifically, because the middle doesn't have assets to hedge with and doesn't qualify for assistance to fall back on. Understanding that doesn't pay your mortgage. I know that. But it points you toward the right questions, and it stops the energy drain of wondering what's wrong with you. Next week we're going into housing specifically, whether it still makes sense to buy, when it doesn't, and what that decision actually looks like in real numbers for real families. If you want to be there for that, subscribe. And if something in this video finally put words to something you've been feeling, tell me in the comments. I read them. The more you tell me where the pressure is, the more useful I can make this channel. I'm Marcus Carter. Take care of your family. I'll see you next week.